Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Cage Talk. My name is Alex. Today, my guest fought in the Pride, also appeared in the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was the very first Strikeforce Light Heavyweight Champion. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the man, Bobby Southworth. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, thank you. How about yourself?
Just hanging in here, man. It's kind of cold in Texas today. It's pretty cold.
Yeah, it is. Cold and windy.
Exactly, yeah. What part are you located?
I'm in San Antonio.
Okay, I'm in Dallas. So, okay.
Oh, nice.
Gotcha. How long you been in San Antonio for?
11 years now. Moved here in like March of 2010, so it's about 11 years.
How's San Antonio? You like it? I only went there, I think, twice before moving to Dallas. I just went to the Riverwalk, which everyone does. But other than that, how's it on the outskirts if you live out there?
It's all right. I mean, I'm from California, so obviously it's different. It's an adjustment, but it's been 11 years, so, it's good for the family. It's, slow, relaxed pace.
Gotcha. Sounds good. You had a gym over there, correct? Or you still do?
I do. I did have a gym. COVID kind of got in the way of that, but we're in the process of reopening. Now that the vaccine's going to come. I was actually teaching out of a UFC gym.
Okay.
And they actually sold the gym without really telling any of us during COVID. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of
that's kind of shitty.
Kind of, yeah, super shitty thing to do. But, that's the kind of people they are. I mean, I was there for 5 years and I kind of slowly came to realize that, but it is what it is. And, one door closes, another door opens, and
absolutely
better things are in the future. So
yeah, definitely, man. And we'll dive into that a little bit later on, especially UFC. I've had plenty of fighters on and they express their maybe discontent with the company itself, but it's always interesting to hear, other people's opinions and stuff. Cause I mean, depends on what kind of fighter you are or what you did for the organization kind of led them to their decision and if they like the UFC or not. So,
right.
So let's just dive right into it, man. What got you into MMA? What was your first avenue into it?
I had a friend, friend that, he's still a friend, but I haven't even been to my hometown and so on. But his name's Conti Leon. He immigrated from China, and he knew Kung Fu, and like he would show me moves and stuff like that. And, we got out of high school, went our separate ways. And then a few years after college, like I just saw him randomly. He's all, Bobby, man, come check this out. And this was probably in 1994. And he actually had on tape the first 2 UFCs. And so he showed me on the VCR, and he's all, dude, what do you think of this? And Conti was always a hustler. Like he's a successful, wealthy guy. He has a lot of real estate in Santa Cruz, California. He owns a couple restaurants in town.
Okay.
But he was he was trying to start a business. And so he showed me, we watched the UFC. Obviously I was always picking wrong. Nobody ever picked Royce Gracie to win any of the fights, and he was winning all the fights. So then he's like, hey, I'm bringing a Brazilian guy up here, because he had been going down to take privates. He had been going down to the Gracie Gym in Torrance to take privates, because he was a lifetime martial artist. I wasn't. I was a basketball player and a surfer. But he showed me the tape and told me this guy was coming. And so, I showed up there and for my first class, and just took my first class and kind of fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And that's really kind of where it took off. There's more to the story than that. Eventually I got hurt. My first Conti actually injured me my first week, because I threw a triangle on him, and and he didn't want to tap, and he kind of spazzed out, and I injured my rib. And then during my rehab time, I met Cesar Gracie, and he was actually closer to me than Conti, than because I was working out of town. I had a daughter. I was coming back to town on the weekends, and that's how I got hooked up. But I was getting off work and driving an hour and a half from 6:30 in the morning, to take these 2 morning classes that first week. I got hurt. I met Caesar at a seminar, and then I realized he was 20 minutes away from me. So
that was perfect.
I showed up there, and I was training with Caesar for a little bit, and Ralph Gracie came to America, and that's who I originally got my first belt from, was Ralph. And then Ralph wanted to go to Mountain View to open a gym, and Mountain View was closer to my hometown, so I would be closer to my family. And that's really where that journey started. I was training with Ralph for a while, and Ralph was going to get me a fight in Brazil, but eventually Ralph and I had a falling out. And after our falling out, a good friend of mine took me to, he talked to me about AKA, American Kickboxing Academy. So in the winter of 1997, he took me to AKA, and he introduced me to Javier. And when I was walking into the gym, literally Frank Shamrock was walking out of the gym.
Oh, shit.
And he was like 2 days removed from having knocked out Enson Inoue to win the King of Pancrase. So I went in, had a talk with Javier and let him know a little bit about my background. And obviously jiu-jitsu was rising. So they had Brian Johnston there as well, who was one of the original. He fought in one of the first couple UFCs, and he had a submission fighting team there. And so, Jav was like, I want a jiu-jitsu program. So let's see how you do with the guys and what the guys think of you. So, he took me over there, and they asked me, and I said, yeah, I do jiu-jitsu. I'm a blue belt. And I told them my background. And I was teaching for Ralph. I mean, I was teaching a lot of the classes for the first year and a half that the Mountain View School opened up. So I was like living on the mat. I mean, my 3.5 years of jiu-jitsu was twice a day plus yuking and teaching the morning privates and evening privates 6 days a week. You know what I mean? So, I mean, my 3.5 years was probably closer to like 8 years of somebody else's training. You know what I mean? It was a lot of training. Anyways, I tapped all those guys out. You know what I mean? And not not saying that, bragging. I don't look at jiu-jitsu like that, and that was one of the things that got me in good with Brian Johnson, because, I caught him with a couple submissions, and I wasn't like trying to crank on him. It was when you're rolling, it's already competitive by nature, right? You don't have to try to go hard and it's already, yeah. If you do jiu-jitsu, or any type of combat sport, it's already challenging physically. And so Brian liked that. And all of us were hanging out and talking, and I was getting along with the guys. We actually went out for beers like after. And so that's when Javier offered me the job of starting a jiu-jitsu program. So I actually founded the jiu-jitsu program at American Kickboxing Academy. Part of the conversation with Javier was, my goal was to fight, but the game was changing. It was obviously needed striking. So he agreed if I ran the jiu-jitsu program, he would coach me and train me to strike. And so, he started training me, and like 3 months, I think it was 3 or 4 months later, I went and won a silver medal in the Golden Gloves, and that was kind of what got me started on the path. And that's where it went from. Yeah.
Gotcha. What before obviously UFC, you were fighting before UFC, the Ultimate Fighter and stuff like that, because actually weren't you kind of coming out of retirement at that time with the Ultimate Fighter season 1, or how's that? Explain to me.
It wasn't really a retirement. I had kind of just walked away from the sport. Javier and I had a disagreement about, we just had a falling out, and I walked away from the sport. So to get before that, so Javier trained me. I did the Golden Gloves, and, Frank Shamrock was fighting out of there, and I kind of became one of his main sparring partners. I was like one of his main sparring partners for all of his UFC fights, except for the Tito fight. And so we're, obviously there were some solid professional boxers there. We had David Vetter, who was, he fought James Toney. He fought for multiple North American and international titles. We had another guy named Cecil McKenzie, who had fought Michael Nunn. We had Jerome Turcan, who's kind of a French kickboxing legend. He's like 7-time European savant, 7-time European Muay Thai champion. We had Jean-Claude Loyer, you can see in a lot of movies, and he was a K1 fighter. So there was just, it was kind of like my Princess Bride moment. You know what I mean? It was like, I was there working, teaching, and these guys were showing me stuff every day. And, you know, and some days they would not on purpose beat me down, but, you know, it was just, but that's how you learn. Those are the lessons you learn the best. So, and Crazy Bob Cook was basically teaching Frank's submission fighting classes. And so we struck up, you know, we became friends, and he ended up getting me my first fight, which was in the IFC, the IFC was probably, I mean, so many fighters went to the UFC from the IFC. I mean, Vladimir Matyshenko, John Marsh. I mean, there are just so many dudes, Chuck Liddell. There's so many dudes that came out of, that was during the dark days when the UFC wasn't allowed on cable. So the IFC, you know, they had a niche. It was a small promotion, and what they were doing was they were holding their fights at the Native American casinos.
Okay.
So, you know, the federal law doesn't apply, so they could have, you know, that. I mean, this has kind of been talked about, but it's a part of my history too. And so I was fighting there. King of the Cage and Gladiator Challenge were doing the same thing, but I fought in the IFC and I won their North American title, their Intercontinental title. And I defended both belts, and that's kind of what got me to Pride, you know. Okay. And so, you know, and I fought Vitor Belfort. We took that fight like on 2 weeks' notice. It literally was
that was your debut, right? In Pride?
Yeah, it was like my third or fourth professional fight. My debut was actually in a promotion called Neutral Grounds. Okay. Which a lot of people don't remember that one. That it was
that one I don't recall.
It was like Pancration, but a lot of guys went to the UFC from Neutral Grounds as well. And so my first fight, it was supposed to be at 195. Okay, so it was I don't know what they called middleweight or something like that. But the guys that were in my weight division, two of these known guys, they were already UFC vets, was Travis Fulton and this other guy named Jason Godsey. So we weighed in, and I made weight, and everybody else was like 240 or and above. Damn. So, you know, that was back in the day. That's how they did things. It's kind of one of the negatives. One of the reasons I don't get along great with many promoters. So anyways, they threw me in. It was my first fight, right? And so my draw was either to fight Travis Fulton, who had 80 fights at the time, or to fight Jason Godsey, who had already had close to over 30 fights, and he'd already fought twice in the UFC. So I drew Jason Godsey. You know, I did pretty well. I lacked a lot of wrestling ability then, and he ended up taking me down and catching me in a choke. And then 8 days later, I fought in the Super Brawl 13 in Hawaii and knocked out my opponent. And so that got me into the IFC, and then I was fighting in the IFC for a little bit. Actually, only two or three fights. I fought more for them after Pride, but that's how I got, you know, having those titles is kind of what made my resume look good enough when the bigger Pride, the reason I got the Pride fight with Belfort is it wasn't like they came looking for me, right? It was like
a replacement, right?
Yeah, so all we do is like Guy Mesger didn't want to fight somebody. Belfort was supposed to fight somebody who fell off, and so it was short notice. So like Guy Mesger didn't want to take the fight. A couple other guys didn't want to take the fight, and I guess it looked good. You know, it would look good. My resume looked good enough, so they threw me right into the deep end, so to speak.
Now, when you were doing this, right? When you finally got the call for Pride and stuff, did you know any background on Pride already, or was it still something that
no,
you already knew about it?
Yeah, we were watching Pride. I mean, that was when Ultimate Fighter aired in 2005. Yep. And until just before the UFC acquired Pride was still the place to be. Pride. I'm not saying business model or profits and revenue stuff, but Pride was where everybody wanted to fight because it was, you know, Saitama Super Arena, 50,000 people, Tokyo Superdome, 70,000 people, you know, and it's a totally different atmosphere over there. And, you know, ultimately, I'm not saying Pride was the better promotion at all, but just during that time, that era of the sport, Pride was number one, you know? Definitely. So, and they were paying. So
yeah, that's one thing that was kind of funny because I had Mark Hunt on my show, and he was talking about. I was kind of trying to talk to him about the different promotions and, you know, paying wise and how they treated. And I mean, obviously coming from K1 and stuff, but he said that he loved Pride just because they would pay the athletes and stuff. And obviously he has his
Pride was phenomenal. I mean, everything. And I'm not saying you can't look at Pride, and obviously they had a flawed business model and wherever their funding was coming from and all the other things that have been said. So to the UFC at the time, because, you know, when the UFC was $40 million or whatever it was in the whole pre-Ultimate Fighter, you know, trying to turn it into a viable business. So the business mentality there, I'm 40 million in the hole. Yeah. One promotion, I have an unlimited supply of money coming in from who knows where. You know what I mean?
Where that is come from, yeah.
You know, and it was different in the Japanese, you know, martial arts is a part of the culture. I mean, you're getting mobbed there in Japan. It's like you're signing autographs. Like this one, I didn't even realize this one kid had come up to me 8 different times and got my autograph. And I was like, Bob, man, why is this kid? I've already given him. And he told me they're selling them. He's going around selling your autograph. I'm like, what's my signature worth? You know what I mean? It was just like, but it's just it was a different culture over there. So, definitely. You know, and you know, your accommodations were first rate, the food, I mean, just the way they treated you was just, you know, it was different than, I mean, I was coming from the IFC. I hadn't been in the UFC or anything like that. I mean, I'd been to some of the fights and I knew Dana at that point, but it was just, you know, comparing the two. And if you look at where the UFC is now, or even where they were 5 years after the Ultimate Fighter, I don't think Pride ever even approached that. So, you know, it's obvious where the better business model and who was the superior promotion, you know, longevity
wise. Yeah. I agree. Coming from Pride, man, because a lot of people, can you explain a little bit the difference between fighting in a ring and fighting in an octagon? Because, again, some people that never fought before in a ring or never fought in an octagon would just curious.
That's tough. It's tough for me to explain because at AKA, before 2011, when they moved to the big headquarters gym, there was no cage at AKA. So all of our sparring was done in the ring, or on the mats and against like the wall mats on like you have in most grappling academies. So, I mean, to me, it wasn't any different. I will say that the ring is more forgiving. You know, everybody thinks, and even for gym wise, like everybody thinks the cage is super cool, right? Well, the first time that you get taken down and pushed into the cage and have your face or your back grinding and your elbows and your knees grinded up against the cage, it's not very romantic, you know what I mean?
I think it's just the look. Maybe people are like, oh, it's the cage, you know, like a lot of people get this idea that, you know, like if you find the cage and this and that. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. It's not the nicest, especially you have your opponent on you and grinding their fucking elbow in your face.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, it has its place, but it's a marketing thing. It's not really necessary for your development as a fighter. And when the fight starts, I mean, it's annoying in training, but in the fight starts, when you're fighting and the adrenaline's going, you don't feel anything till way after. You know what I mean? Most of your injuries, most guys don't even know they're hurt till the next morning, unless something's broken. So, yeah,
definitely. Now, coming from Pride, when did the UFC contact you for the Ultimate Fighter? When did all that happen?
The UFC actually didn't contact me for the Ultimate Fighter. Going back to we were talking about my retirement. So
okay, yeah, let's go back there.
Yeah. Whatever my so-called retirement, whatever you know, the misunderstandings Javier and I had, which ultimately led to me basically being exiled from the gym and walking away from the sport for about a year. During that year, I was just working. I didn't really do any training. I mean, I would go in 1 or 2 Saturdays a month and roll with my friends, you know, but I wasn't doing anything like fighter training. But I was watching still, you know, I've been a fan of the sport. I still religiously follow the UFC. And when we had cable, we're all streaming now. When we had cable, I would You know, I was watching LFA, I was watching Access. I mean, I like fighting. It doesn't boxing, Glory kickboxing, K1 kickboxing. It doesn't matter. But I was seeing a lot of these guys from our gym who I felt I was a better fighter than were having some success in the UFC. Paul Buentello, Josh Thompson, Mike Kyle.
Mike Kyle, you kind of look like Mike Kyle a little bit, man. I
looks like me. I'm a lot older than him. He looks like me.
I haven't heard Mike Kyle and Paul Buentello, and oh man, I haven't heard those names in a while. But go on.
Yeah, man. AKA, it was a deep gym, a lot of storied history there. But anyways, they were doing well, so I reached out to Crazy Bob, and I was like, man, I want to give this one more shot. So he kind of smoothed things over with me with Javier. And so I came back to the gym for my first training session. I came in on a Tuesday, and our training schedule was we have Monday, Wednesday, Fridays. Those are our sparring days, and you do sparring and grappling. And then Tuesday, Thursdays is more technique, and then a little bit more grappling emphasis, wrestling, and like ground and pound work.
Okay.
So I went in on Tuesday, and like I said, I hadn't trained, and I trained, and I couldn't even move the next day. You know what I mean? I was just wiped out. But that day, everybody was talking about the tapes and because we had Mike Swick, we had John Fitch, we had Koscheck. He wasn't training at the gym yet, but he was under the Zinkin or under the AKA umbrella.
Yeah.
And these guys, everybody was talking about wondering who was going to get on the show. And I'm like, what show? What are you guys talking about? And they told me about it. And I asked Bob, and I'm like, well, can you send in a tape for me? Well, I can't do that because it's already past the deadline. And I was like, man, come on. Well, then just give me the address or give me Dana's number. He knows me. I'll call him. He's all right. Let me see what I can do. Well, if you saw when they did, I think it was on Spike or Paramount, it's called now. They did like a 20 or 25 year anniversary, and they were talking about the show and like how the network people were trying to put like keeping up with the Kardashians, but so they had all these drama kings, but they couldn't fight, right? And so that's when Dana stepped in. He's like, "Oh, dude, you guys are doing this wrong. Ultimately, these guys are going to have to fight, and these fucking pussies, they're not going to be able to cut it," is basically what he said. So and then they started casting guys with MMA backgrounds, right? But then once that happened, they have to go through a background check and, you know, a drug test. So guys were failing the steroid test. Guys were failing the background checks for felonies and woman beating and, you know, abusing people. And then they're failing the drug tests for cocaine and marijuana and opiates or whatever it was, you know. So that just started narrowing the list down. And so eventually I got the call. So I went out there again and again, like, so this was Tuesday that I talked to Bob and where we talked about sending in the tape. So I couldn't go back I couldn't even train until Friday because I was just so sore. Mm-hmm. So from that Friday to the next Friday,
you got the goal.
I was building my training up. So that's 1 week. Well, then Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, this dude calls me and asks me if I can fly to Vegas to do my medical checks and my interviews with like the executives and Dana and stuff like that. And so when he called me, it was after training. I was sore, so I was sitting there taking a little puff, right? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure, I can. And they didn't tell us about the drug test, so I was like, oh, sure, I can come out. And so I get there and we do everything, and then they're all, now you have to go to do a drug test. And I was like, oh, what? You guys didn't say anything about that. And so obviously I popped for THC. So then they called me back, and the guy was like, oh, well, and I'm like, dude, you called me on Tuesday. Well, on Sunday, I was at a friend's house watching the game, and all these guys were smoking weed. And I was sitting there. What do you want? You didn't tell me there was a drug test. If you had told me there was a drug test, I would have told you not to waste your time flying me out because I would have failed. Mm-hmm. He's like, oh, so it's not like you're a chronic smoker and you smoke. I'm like, dude. I go, dude, I wouldn't even say I'm a recreation smoker. You know what I mean? Right? But that was in the past. And so they flew me back out to redo the drug test, and I passed. So that got me in the show. You know what I mean? And the rest is, to be cliche, the rest is history, whatever. But that was the story of kind of how I got into the Ultimate Fighter.
Interesting. Now being in the Ultimate Fighter, how was that? Because I think I remember watching some of the Ultimate Fighter season 1 and stuff like that. I know you eventually lost to Stephan Bonner. I think it was a decision, right? How was being in the house? Because it was almost like road rules. It was weird. Like half the tasks you had to do had nothing to do with like MMA. It was almost like it was. Well,
that's because it wasn't. There was no fighting. It was honestly, and you can see that's in the 25 where Kenny Florian and Forrest they actually come clean with that fact. Was they keep talking about it being a fight show because of Dana's favorite speech. It never was supposed to be a fight show. I could probably go in my garage and dig the contract out. It was supposed to be road rules, like some stupid, MTV.
Yeah.
I didn't even watch reality. I didn't even watch those shows. Mm-hmm. I never watched Road Rules. I didn't watch Jersey Shore. The first reality show I think I watched, I saw an episode of Survivor, but then it was The Contender, I think was the first reality show that I really ever watched. So anyways, it was like that. That's what they wanted it to be, like some type of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, one of those old school MTV reality shows.
Was that why it was so confusing for the fighters? If you watch the first season, people are confused about fighting. They thought they were going to fight in the tournament. I don't think they were, and it was like some confusion. That's where Dana White was getting pissed and stuff. Because I saw some highlights of shit.
I'll tell you. I'll run it all down for you. So what happened was, originally on the contract, we were supposed to do like road rules, so challenges and all those things, and eventually the two guys in each weight division, those guys would end up fighting on a UFC card to see who the Ultimate Fighter was going to be.
Gotcha.
So you were not supposed to be fighting till the end of the show. So we're doing the challenges, and really what was happening was we were beating Randy's team at every single challenge. And so they were losing guys, and we were having to give guys from our team to theirs. That's when they decided that they wanted to make it a fight show. Okay. And again, nobody there was going to have any problem fighting. I mean, if you look at the people who were in the house, except for maybe Jason Thacker, obviously, the Canadian kid who you saw a little bit on there, but everybody who stayed on the show and ended up fighting on the show, they had far better than average MMA careers. Okay. So there was never going to be any question about the fighting. But they just didn't tell us. And so all of a sudden, they're telling us that we have to fight. And so in our contract, if you got to the point of winning all the challenges and you were the guy who won the fight on the UFC card, then you would get the opportunity to fight 3 times. Okay. Those 3 fights, if you won 3 of the fights, then you would get, if you won all 3, you would get $100,000, right? So you didn't win the season and get $100,000. You had to fight 3 more times to get $100,000.
Gotcha. It's always something.
So when they told us that we were going to fight, that's where basically our problem was that we had to fight for free. So what I did, and you can see it on the show, and this is what leads up to Dana's famous "Do you want to be a effing fighter?" speech, is that I organized like nobody would talk. Like we were all just sitting around, not talking, sitting around the house, like not giving them any drama. So I kind of organized like a little strike. Anyways.
Were you pissed off because you're basically fighting for free, or you think it was because of maybe just the show wasn't going the way they wanted to go, and they're like, okay, we have to switch this up?
I mean, in the moment you're pissed off, right? Because everything is subjective. But when you look back at what the way they put everything together, I mean, that was an awesome reality show. I mean, the season 1, it was the best season ever. They can't duplicate it. That show produced the most champions. I think, of any of the other seasons, you know, not necessarily UFC champions, but guys who went on to be champions in
I think
other
it was the most
organizations.
talented. I think it was the most talented group of fighters they ever had was the first season, to be honest with you.
And so, and, you know, but it was what I'm saying is it was a learning experience for everybody. You know, like when we got there, the only food they had for us was like Hot Pockets and Snickers ice cream bars, but all the alcohol you could drink, right? If you wanted to get, you know, chicken and fish or something like that, it seemed to take forever. But if you wanted a 12-pack, boom, it would just like literally.
They're setting you up.
You know what I mean?
Setting you guys up.
So anyways, eventually, you know, we were complaining. A couple of the guys were complaining, and I went in and sat down with Dana, and we talked about it. And he was really the one who implemented. Like, he said, "What do you guys need?" And I'm like, "We need, you know, lean meats. We need fruits. We need vegetables. We need a juicer. We need, you know." And so then they started stocking us up, you know. And this benefited the stuff that happened on season 1. Benefited
Everyone else after
the seasons after, but not just that, but the fighters in general. So back to the strike where we were being silent, and Dana got all pissed off and called us in and gave us that big speech. And he was like, if you watch it, he'll say, "You have the greatest, you're fighting for $1,000. And I was like, "No, Dana, we're fighting for the opportunity to fight 3 times to win $100,000. That's like asking the Survivor guy to do 3 more Survivors to get his million." You know what I mean? It's just, it's not. And so what happened from there was that's where they came up with, if you finish the fight, you get $5,000. Okay.
Okay.
So that strike that I organized actually translated into what the bonus system is today. So those bonus for finishing on the show, that was the first place where they had finishing bonuses. Then it moved in to the main promotions, right? To the main cards, to where, you know, remember used to be, now it's performance bonus, but it used to be knockout of the night, submission of the night, fight of the night. That all came from season 1 of The Ultimate Fighter. So that's what I mean by the learning that we were actually real athletes, you know, and that this was a real sport. We needed real nutrition. That benefited subsequent seasons. If you watch, the guys they got to pick their meals, and every day they could order a special meal like sushi or something like that. And the seasons after, well, the first 2 weeks we were on the show, there was like honey bunches of oats and Hot Pockets and bars with 12 packs of Corona and
it's a college dorm basically. It's a college dorm.
Exactly. So, you know, I mean, but like I said, looking back, when you're in the moment, and it's all those things are subjective, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You know what I mean? After watching after watching all the episodes and everything like that, it was, I mean, I already had really enjoyed the experience. Like he said, being on the show, you don't have to worry about anything else. Once they got us the food, it's like, all you have to do is train and fight. And you had really good coaches. You had Mark Lehman, our jiu-jitsu coach. You had Peter Welch, the boxing coach. You had Ganyao Fairtex, the Muay Thai coach. So it was like another one of those Princess Bride moments. Like I was, you just wake up, you go in, you learn, you train, you get better. And that was an experience that I really liked, which just got amplified after seeing how they put the show together. Because the first season, whatever everybody sees on television, there was a lot of editing done. And Danny even said that he could have made anybody a hero or anybody a villain, but there was that. And it's true. I mean, guys, I've seen interviews where guys have said this and this and that about the show, but everybody had their good moments and bad moments. And so, you know, there's no paragons of moral virtue there, you know what I mean? So, but it was an awesome experience.
That's awesome, man. And then coming from after leaving the Ultimate Fighter and stuff, unfortunately you didn't win, but you ended up having a career after in Strikeforce. Now explain to me how you got the Strikeforce gig and how it felt to be the first light heavyweight champion. That's pretty cool. And who you defeated. It wasn't Vernon White, right?
Yeah, it was. It was?
Okay, I was trying to remember the fight. Okay.
Yeah. So it was, yes. So Strikeforce originally started as a kickboxing promotion. Okay. And it's based is based in Silicon Valley. American Kickboxing Academy, AKA, is based in Silicon Valley. And Strikeforce is a promotion, as a kickboxing promotion, evolved from this ISKA karate and ISKA kickboxing, which is run by Scott Coker, who's now with Bellator. Yes. So he and Javier had a relationship for years. I mean, years before I even showed up at AKA. You know, like I had been lucky enough, like I always was given tickets to being an AKA fighter. I always got tickets to go to the Strikeforce kickboxing events, and AKA usually had fighters, you know, at those events. There were a couple, we had gotten into negotiations for me to fight for them a couple times because I have a little bit of a kickboxing background as well. Anyways, like I knew Scott Coker knew me. And so when he, you know, he'd been to AKA, he'd watched the pro training sessions, you know, when he decided to make the move into promoting MMA, obviously AKA being a local camp and that's not, perfect. You know, with a world-class level, you know, mixed martial arts team, it was natural that they were going to be using our fighters. So, you know, it didn't work out for me with the UFC. And right after, literally, I mean, I don't know the exact time frame, but literally right after the season 1 finale or something like that, a few months after that, I think, was when they did their first show, and it was the biggest attendance ever. They broke all, when Strikeforce premiered with their first show, it broke all these attendance records and live gate revenue records and things like that. And I think it was headlined by Frank Shamrock versus Cesar Gracie. You know, a little bit of a Pride era fight. Yeah. That's kind of one of those.
Strikeforce, man. A lot of people doubt Strikeforce, but they had some good fighters there, man. They had a lot of good fighters, man.
When the UFC absorbed Strikeforce, the Strikeforce fighters came in and started wrecking shop. I mean, guys went right. You mean guys went right to the top of the division. A lot of guys fought for titles. A lot of guys were ranked. Josh Thompson, Luke Rockhold, Daniel Cormier. Those are just AKA fighters, but there was Jacare. I mean, there were lots of other guys that definitely made an immediate impact in the UFC. So, you know, Strikeforce was a solid promotion. So my first fight there was with James Irving. That one, you know, I was going to win that fight, but what happened was, and I don't know how it happened, was there's a metal pin that goes in the cage to keep the cage door closed, but they didn't have it. And so what they had been doing in previous fights was putting a pin in the thing. And so in my fight with James, you know, we hit the cage, the door fell open, and, you know, he said, if you watch the clip, you'll see me. He throws a kick, and I hit him with a beautiful left hook that kind of stuns him. Mm-hmm. But James, he hit her, and so but not good at grappling. So the goal was not to stand with him. So I hit him with the left hook, and I just automatically shot for the takedown. When I'm watching the fights, I mean, I should just hit him with an angled off, and if I had hit him with just one more punch, the fight probably would have been over. He was literally out on his feet. So I shot in, and he wasn't even really defending, and we hit the cage, and he fell. And I got off him, and he literally woke up. He kind of came to, and he was like, first he was holding his face, then he was holding his right leg, then he was holding his left leg, then he was holding his left ankle. And if you hear the audio, Phil Baroni's even talking about it, and he eventually chose not to continue, saying that he had an injury to his leg. So it was kind of a controversial stoppage, right? And it went to a no contest, which upset me because that means I only got half my pay.
Yeah.
And it's like, I hit him and hurt him. I took him down, and he got hurt and chose not to continue. He wasn't injured from falling out. You know what I mean? It was like, I should have win. So it's like, looking, you know, I'm just thinking in my mind when I'm in the cage, I was pissed. So mostly because of the money, you know what I mean? You're
definitely, man.
Half the money, I was a little bit upset, but so then they made that a no contest, but Strikeforce was still trying to move forward, and they wanted a champion at light heavyweight. They offered me the shot, and I said, yeah, I'll definitely fight for the title. And then when they offered the opponent, it was Vernon White. And, you know, Vernon, I mean, he's a longtime veteran of the sport. The guy has a ton of fights. I mean, I think he has over 100 fights if you include his kickboxing matches. And he was around for a long time. Talented guy, not the most focused fighter. But he was when I was watching the early MMAs, like the IVCs,
He was there.
He was there. And so he was like a guy that, I looked up to him. So it was like, oh, this is a challenge, you know what I mean? And I got the call, he took the fight, we fought. A lot of people, they said it wasn't the most exciting fight, but it takes two to tango, right? And Vernon was known for making fights ugly. Like he had a fight with Lyoto Machida and called the WFA that, I was trying to finish. And if you watch the fights, I'm shooting, I'm throwing punches, I'm shooting takedowns, I'm doing ground and pound, I'm going for submissions.
Mm-hmm.
But, he's a savvy veteran. He's a tough guy to finish. Mario Sperry didn't submit him when they fought. And he's a grappling legend. A lot of guys didn't knock him out. So, to me, it's like Fast and the Furious. An inch or a mile, winning's winning, right? I don't care if I knock out or submit you, because if I win, it's more money. So my goal is, first and foremost, is to win. And obviously I wanted that belt. So it was like, my goal was to get the belt, and I wasn't going to take any unnecessary risks, because Vernon, he's got a decent bag of tricks. If you watch the fight, he almost pulled a couple rabbits out of the hat. He almost pulled a standing Kimura off. He caught me with a nice, like, looping right hook that I didn't even see. That kind of
tricky. He's a tricky fighter.
Yeah, he's very tricky, and he's a southpaw. Yeah. So I put my work in. I took my time, and I got the victory. And
was that probably is that your most satisfying thing in your career? Could you say that, looking back, saying winning the Strikeforce title?
It's in my career, it's one of the top two. I think the most satisfying victory was defending it, because I actually had a non-title bout against a guy named Anthony Ruiz, and the fight was stopped on a cut in a fight that I was winning, and then I got to rematch him for the title. And he's another savvy veteran. A lot of people may not know who he is, but like, he's a light heavyweight, and he fought up as heavy. He knocked out Brad Imes. He knocked out Jimmy the Titan. He's a guy who's surprised a lot of high-level fighters. And it was unfortunate that the fight was stopped by the cut, because I felt I was able to continue and I was winning the fight, but that set him up for a title shot. And so in the rematch, again, they said it was boring, but I wasn't going in there to finish him. I was going in there. He had to pay, you know what I mean? So I wanted to not really punish him, but I wanted to put it on him, for the whole amount of time, and make him regret beating me, It's too bad. We probably should have had a third fight, And Anthony's a super nice guy. We talked after the fight. We were at a couple promotions together. Definitely not a personal thing, but defending the title was really probably the top, because anybody can win a belt. You know what I mean? And a real champion defends, and I really think that was really satisfying that I had one successful title defense. So I got two belts sitting over here in my closet. So
that's awesome, man.
About that.
That's pretty cool. Again, if you want to tell anyone what you like, again, you said before that you started a gym. I was reading a little bit about the gym, especially in San Antonio and stuff. And hopefully that will you guys started it up again, man.
Yeah, it will. We're looking to open sometime in late spring. Tentatively, the name is AKA San Antonio, but it's definitely going to be an American Kickboxing Academy. We'll be doing boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and fitness. So keep an eye out for that when we open up. Come check us out if you
definitely, like, man. It's only 3 hours. It's only 3.5 hours away. I'll drive.
I was kind of saying that to the people that are watching, happen to be from San Antonio that might be watching. Come check us out. Look for us on social media. So that's my main focus route. Obviously not getting COVID, and then getting my gym up and running again is I have a following of students, and we're the one. I have some guys that they're working from home. I know they're following safety protocols. So I got about 10 or 15 guys that we meet up a few days a week, and we're rolling. I matted out a couple garages.
Okay.
So, those people will be following me over when we open up the gym, and hopefully some of the people that were with us at the UFC gym here in San Antonio that I was coaching at will come on over once they know we're up and running, and we'll just go from there.
All right, man. Again, hopefully everything works out for you and your gym. I do appreciate you coming on. It's been more than a pleasure of having you on, Bobby, man. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you.
And
I appreciate you having me.
And thank you for sharing the insight of the Ultimate Fighter or Road Rules 2.0 or something.
I hope I wasn't babbling too much, but yeah.
No, man.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Shoot me the links or whatever through Instagram, and when you get this all edited up. And
yeah, I'll edit it up and I'll send it to you, man. But again, thank you so much for everything, buddy.
No problem.